Maxey from outside. Sixers lead, courtesy of Tyrese Maxey.
Hit deep to left field. Going back is LoCastro. It is gone!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. As always, your host, Ryan Coyle, back breaking down another team as part of our college football preview series. So far, we've kind of been on a run, a little bit of a rotation here with the conferences. We've done Oklahoma, we've done Michigan, we've done Clemson, we've done Texas Tech, we've done South Carolina as our second SEC team. Today, we go into our second Big Ten team, another USC. We're going out to California for the Southern Cal Trojans. A pivotal year, I think, for Lincoln Riley. Year two in the Big Ten for USC. I was very down on them going into the year last year. I didn't think that they had quite, frankly, the beef up front to withstand playing in that conference in the Big Ten. And I think they did get pushed around. I think at spurts they kind of played well. But that was a team that was really kind of built on finesse, and the Lincoln Riley teams that we saw at Oklahoma and, the Caleb Williams teams at USC. That isn't really Big Ten bully ball material football. And I thought it would take kind of an adjustment here. We'll, as always, go through everything. We'll go through the head coach in this episode, talk about Lincoln Riley a bit, recap the 2024 season, and go into the offense, defense, and look ahead at the schedule this year. But coming off a 7-6 season last year, it's a big year. Lincoln gets that job, and I think expectations were leaving Oklahoma that he would turn this USC team into a national title contender right away. He was, one game away from going to the playoff in his first year there at USC with Caleb Williams. They lose that Pac-12 title game, and then they ultimately don't go to the playoff. And kind of since then, they've been on a downslide. I think it's a big year. You go out and give this guy a $100 million contract. The expectations were that this would be a national title contending team. I don't necessarily think that they're going to be in the playoff this year, but they better be in the mix. They better be in the conversation. His buyout's too large to get fired. I think he's still too good of a coach to consider firing him, but expectations should be national title contention for Lincoln Riley and USC. But we'll talk about the head coach here to start it off. As we were mentioning, Lincoln Riley, 81-24 overall record as a college head coach. That's just something that undeniable. He's a winner. You can't fire that. 3-4 in bowls, 0-3 in the college football playoff when he was at Oklahoma. I think they would kind of plateau when they would get to that point through the Big 12, and then you play a more physical SEC or Big Ten team that they weren't really up to match for that, and that's I think the biggest obstacle here at USC, getting over that hump. He's been the head coach at USC since 2022. Has gone 11-3 in that first year, as I mentioned. Was a win away in the Pac-12 title game from going to the playoff. They lose that, and they lose to, I believe it was Tulane in the bowl game. But then year two he goes 8-5. Year three he goes 7-6. First year in the Big Ten. It's gotten gradually worse. I think the expectation should be 9 wins, hopeful for 10. That should be kind of the goal. Anything less than 8 wins, I would be very worried. And if they go 6-6 or something, do you buy him out? Do you look and say kind of what's going on here? We acquired you and we brought you in to be this big time head coach. What are we really doing with the program right now? Not living up to the expectation. So a pivotal year, I think, coming up. Finished tied for 9th in the Big Ten last year. But when he was a coach at Oklahoma, he never lost more than 2 games in a season. I think he was there for 5 or 6 years, something like that, but never lost more than 2 games in a season. Now he's going 11-3, 8-5, 7-6. Just can't be like that. So it has to improve out there at USC, and it's a big year. When we look at last season, 7-6, they started out really hot with a surprise win. They beat 13th ranked LSU 27-20 to start the season. That was a game that I really liked LSU just because I thought it was going to be kind of a welcome. I know LSU is an SEC team, but I thought it would be kind of one of those like welcome to the Big Ten moments because you're playing a physical LSU squad, and USC was able to handle them. They played well in that game. LSU got out to a hot start. USC comes back and wins, though. But it really went kind of downhill from there. They lost to Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, and Maryland, and Washington by a combined 19 points. So you have 1 loss, 2 loss, 3 loss, 4 loss. You have 5 losses by a combined 19 points. Something goes, the other way, this could be a 9 or 10 win team last year. It just kind of comes down to that. That Penn State game was an awesome game. In overtime, you go to Maryland, cross-country trip. I think they lost that game by 1. But losing to those 5 teams by a combined 19 points just goes to show you, I think, kind of how close they are. Ball bounces a different way. we might be having a different story about USC heading into this season. Went 4-5 in one possession games, but they did go 6-3 when they scored 30 or more. The offense was a little bit up and down last year. The defense really improved from previous years. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but Lincoln Riley, his bread and butter is the offense. When that offense is running, when that offense is humming, this is going to be a tough team to stop. Can they get back to that level this year? Remains to be seen. But we'll talk about the offense here to start. First, 9 starters returned from last year's offense that averaged 30.2 points per game. They took a pretty steep step back, though, last year from the previous 2 seasons where they averaged 41.8 points per game and 41.4 points per game. I think you can also kind of tie that to the defense. They trusted the defense a little bit more. They kind of played, small ball, I think, at times. Because the defense was better. Before, it was basically like we have to go out there and score 40, 50 points a game or we're going to lose because our defense was that bad. I think last year they were able to rely on the defense a little bit more, didn't put as much pressure on the offense, but still, a Lincoln Riley-led group, I think expectations should be 35, 36 points per game, somewhere in that range. Jaden Mayava returns as the full-time starter at quarterback now. He took over for Miller Moss. A little bit more than halfway through the season last year, he led USC to 3 wins in his final 4 starts down the stretch. And Lincoln Riley has produced 3 Heisman quarterbacks. He's had Caleb Williams, he's had Kyler Murray, and he's had Baker Mayfield. He's great with the quarterbacks, a quarterback whisperer. Can Jaden Mayava be that next guy? Can he have a breakout season? A former UNLV transfer comes in last year, kind of sits on the bench, but as I said, plays well down the stretch. Could he be the guy? A dark horse Heisman candidate, 70-1. I think you could use $5, $10 on something dumber than that, with his pedigree with the quarterbacks, a full year in the system now, a full offseason as the starter. Can he be the guy? Can he be one of the breakout players in college football this year? That's something I'm keeping an eye out for. Lincoln loves the running back room too. Reading the Phil Steele magazine, very high on that running back room, believes it's the best since he got there. Look for Eli Sanders to be the go-to guy, it sounds like, but I do expect a rotation. Good mix of guys that can run, downhill, hard-nosed runners, but also some speed guys as well. Some guys that can catch the ball out of the backfield. Should be a pretty fun and exciting running back room there. The receiver room lost a couple of key transfers. You have Zachariah Branch. He transfers to Georgia. He's a little bit still a hypothetical kind of player, waiting for him to put it all together. Another one of their key transfers goes over to Penn State. But they do return their top 2 guys, and most importantly, Jacoby Lane Jr. I think he's going to be a really good player, one of the best receivers in the Big Ten this year, going to be Jaden Mayava's go-to guy. The room isn't that deep, but I trust Lincoln and his system to get guys open. Mayava's just got to go out there and be able to hit these layups and get these open receivers the ball. And the offensive line, reading up on the magazine as well, should be a strength. Returned 75 total starts from the guys that will be in that offensive line room, and they added a few key transfers out of the Big Ten too. So some guys that are experienced, have played in the conference, and they know what it takes in this group. Now we get to the defense. I think the offense is always going to be good with Lincoln Riley. As I said last year, took a step back points per game, but you also lost Caleb Williams, and I think philosophically that it kind of changed some stuff up thanks to the improvement of the defense. The defense took a big step up last year for USC. And that isn't that hard to say because they were historically bad under Alex Grinch. They only allowed 24 points per game last year. That was after the year before allowing 34 points per game. So a significant, increase in defensive production last year, allowing 10 points per game less. Really improved their tackling as well. That was one of the main kind of improvements. The main thing that you noticed the year before, it looked like they didn't want to be there half the time, that USC defense under Alex Grinch. The effort was bad. The angles that they would take on these tackles, it just was ugly football, defensive football. That really improved last year, really got a better, fundamentally sound. D'Anton Lynn was a massive upgrade at the defensive coordinator spot, and they hope to take another leap up this season in his second year. They returned 7 starters from last year. Defensive line upgraded as well in the portal. They should take another step up this year, have a lot of guys on that defensive line that return. I'm expecting this USC defense to take another step, and if Jaden Mayava can play really well at the quarterback spot, if Lincoln Riley gets the most out of him there, it's a situation where it wouldn't surprise me if we look up and USC wins 9 or 10 games, based off some of these improvements. I think I'm buying into some stock on this USC team. Linebacker play, it really improved. As I said, it was a lot of just kind of basic fundamental stuff. So they just got really a lot better, fundamentally sound at tackling. And when you look at the defensive back room, highlighted by one of my favorite safeties in the country, Kamari Ramsey, one of the best safeties in the Big Ten. He returns, had 60 tackles last year, 2 sacks last year, a pick, a few pass breakups, a guy that you can kind of play all over the defense. So look for him to be one of the leaders of this group. But under D'Anton Lynn, I trust this unit to be solid at worst. They're going to show up. They're going to be in the right spot. They're going to tackle well. Can they improve on last year? Can they take another kind of leap, a step up? That's going to really determine, I think, how good ultimately they can be this year. When we get to the schedule and some of the odds over at DraftKings for this team, over-under for the win total is 7.5, juiced to the over at -160. Under is +135. They are 101 to win the Natty, 22-1 to win the Big Ten, which is fifth. They are +450 to make the playoffs, -700 to miss. So, not the loftiest expectations. And if they do just finish like 8-4, it's like, all right, Lincoln, like next year, I think he would enter the season on the hot seat. But this is a big year, a key year for them. We'll run through the schedule real quick, give you a game-by-game breakdown. Missouri State, Georgia Southern, their first two, a couple layups there. I'll give them a win. Then they get to go to Purdue. That should be a win there. Start out 3-0 versus Michigan State. You're looking at a 4-0 start and probably a top 25 team. Then you go to Illinois. I think that's going to be a tough one. I like Illinois to be a really tough Big Ten team this year. I'm going to give them a loss in that one. Michigan comes to USC. That's a coin flip game, but I'll give USC the benefit of the doubt there with being at home. So you're sitting at 5-1 halfway through your season. I think we're taking that at this point. But this is where I think the schedule really gets tough over the second half of the season. It's a much tougher schedule. You go to Notre Dame. I like Notre Dame to potentially go undefeated this year. Spoiler alert. In the regular season, I'm going to give them a loss there. Then they go to Nebraska. Two really tough back-to-back games. I expect Nebraska to take a leap, to take a step up this year. So I'm going to give them USC a loss in that one as well. Then they get to host Northwestern. Should be a win. You look, they're probably, if you want to put UCLA in this too, UCLA, Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State, maybe like put Rutgers, but they might have the four worst teams in the Big Ten on their schedule. You got to go 4-0 in those games. You got to find a way to win those games. So Northwestern, I'll give them a win there. And they host Iowa. I think that's going to be a tough one. It's going to be probably really good offense versus really strong defense in Iowa. Well, what do we get in that one? Who comes out on top? I'll give the benefit of the doubt there to the home team. So then they go to Oregon. That's going to be a tough one. Oregon, I expect to be a top 10 team in the country. Give them a loss there. And then they host UCLA. Give them a win there. So I have them losing to all four of their losses are on the road against probably what I envision as ranked teams all at that time. At Illinois, at Notre Dame, at Nebraska, and at Oregon. Got them losing those. But I got them going 8-4 and hitting that over 7.5. That's a bet I like. That over 7.5 wins. I said if all things shake right, I could see this team winning 9 or 10 games. Like that Illinois game is a coin flip. I could see them winning that one. Nebraska is a coin flip. I could see them winning that one. The only two that I think they're going to be significant, like a touchdown underdog or maybe more in, probably is that Oregon and that Notre Dame game. So a few kind of games where we talked about it earlier. They had 5 games last year that they lost by a combined 19 total points. You look at it this year, they could be 8 wins. They could be 10 wins. They kind of have a pretty high ceiling, I think. How good can that defense be? How good can Jada Mayava be in year 2? But I like this team to go 8-4. I like them to go over that 7.5. I'm not betting them to win the Natty or betting them to win the Big Ten. But if you are going to put some money out there on this USC team, I would consider a long shot bet on Jada Mayava to win the Heisman at 70-1. Lincoln Riley's coached 3 Heisman winning quarterbacks. He's a quarterback whisperer, one of the best offensive coaches in the country. Throw $5 on that 70-1 bet. Throw $10 on that 70-1 bet. If you want to be invested in USC football this year, I could see that being a play. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in here to this episode of Beef Up Front. We will be back with our ACC episode in our next one, probably out early next week. We're going to be breaking down the Miami Hurricanes. Spoiler alert, very low on that team going into the year. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk soon.